In today's video, we will be exploring dial interceptors. Interceptors can be seen as middleware that facilitate implementation of custom logic to modify incoming or outgoing requests. In practice, we use interceptors to facilitate the implementation of a responsible AI approach and enforce compliance with internal and external privacy regulations and policies. Let's start with a quick example of a personally identifiable information masking interceptor on top of Anthropic's Haiku 3. Essentially, this interceptor anonymizes any content it detects as PII and replaces it with a safe parameter prior to sending it to the LLM. When it receives a response from the LLM, it replaces the original unmasked text and returns the response to the end user. In this example, we ask an LLM to create some tables and answer some questions about people's salaries at a certain company. The interceptor can store and present the pre-processed and post-processed states, or its presence can be fully invisible to end users. In this example, you can see how the names and company info are masked by the interceptor before being sent to Haiku. Before we go through a few more examples of interceptors, let's take a look at our dial config to see how they are defined. As you can see, we have our interceptors block, which allows us to define the endpoint for any interceptors that we want to use. You'll notice that interceptors endpoints are either completions or embeddings. While we won't dive into the technical details of the different types of interceptors, or how exactly to implement your own, you can find several reference implementations, detailed documentation, and our Interceptors SDK in the links below. Next, we have our definitions for the models and applications. You can see how you can define interceptors for any application or model that you want. In the config, you can also chain together several interceptors. So for example, in this model, it will send the request through the chat statistics reporter, then the chat statistics reporter interceptor again, and finally the chat reply as a pirate interceptor. On the response phase, it runs through the interceptors in the reverse order. For clarity's sake, I should mention that I have these models separated out for demo and comparison purposes. In practice, the config could only grant access to models or applications with the interceptors on it. Let's take a look at two more sample interceptors. This pirate interceptor is very simple. It just attaches a system prompt to the request to tell the model to answer like a pirate. Here are examples of responses from Haiku 3 with and without the interceptor on top of it. Interceptors can not only work with text, but also with any file attachments. Here's an example of our watermark interceptor, which adds an AI dial watermark to any image before the response is sent to the end user. In a nutshell, interceptors serve as a black box sitting between users' interactions with LLMs. The logic of the black box can be as complex or simple as necessary for the task at hand. Dial makes implementing the interceptors themselves into your Gen AI ecosystem relatively simple. Thank you.